When I was growing up in this church, when I was about 15 to 17 years old, there was a group of young lads a couple of years older than me from our local estate that used to come and torment us. They used to come down here to try and pick on us. I remember them standing outside one of the windows down there when we had marching band on a Monday, and he was punching the glass. Not very wise in my opinion, but he was saying to us, I want to come in and get you. I remember once in our Saturday night youth group, they came in drunk whilst we were playing football, and they just kept kicking us as hard as they could in the legs until one of us punched them in the mouth and their tooth flew across the hall, and the youth leader picked him up under his arm and threw him out. We didn't see them after that. That was the end of it when one of us retaliated, but turn the other cheek. I remember that I used to do a paper round, a weekly one. Do you remember those papers you used to get, the useless ones that had about 150 flyers in them? This was before the internet and all of that advertising. And I used to sit at home and I used to open every paper and put all of these leaflets in and then fold them up, put them in my sack, and I would do the whole of this area. When those kids were terrorising me, one of them was going out with a girl on my road, and so I just avoided one whole half of my paper round. And those papers would end up in the stream down there. I would just go down there, lob about 100 literally of these papers into the stream and leave them every week. After about 3 months, the lady that coordinated it all phoned me and said, Neil, you've got a bit of a problem with your paper round. I said, no, not at all, it's fine. Why do you ask? Oh, rubbish. She said, it's just half the people aren't getting them. I thought, no one reads this stuff. They should be more worried that I've built a dam down there, like the Hoover Dam from local newspapers, than that people aren't reading this rubbish. I remember once coming down Welland Hill, you know the really steep one, just the one over? After school, I got off the bus from Tonbridge Grammar School for Boys, and I walked down the hill, and I saw 3 of them, all older than me, walking up the road. I thought, oh, here it goes. And they surrounded me, and they began to just prod me and pull my tie. You know, so it gets really tight so that you can't untie it. I thought, Paul went through these kinds of things in the Bible. Shipwreck, tie being yanked too tightly, stoned, etc. Fortunately, they left me. Another day I came down the hill after school and I walked along Longmead Way. And as I got past the house where the leader of this gang was going out with this girl, I heard the door slam behind him and swearing ensued. And I turned round and he was there. And I wasn't as muscular and powerful as I am now. Please. And he just threw a punch straight in my face and kept punching me in the face, and I ended up on the floor, and he was kneeling down, breathing over me, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath at 4:20 in the afternoon as he swore at me about what he was going to do to all of the Bible bashers that went to church. He was tormenting me, but the worst bit, and the bit that sticks in my mind, is that they had an Alsatian dog. And he let the Alsatian dog came out, and it came out onto the driveway, and this woman drove past in her car, and she bibbed the horn and went, "You stop doing that!" And I thought, thanks. And he let the dog lick my face whilst I was on the floor, and he was punching and kicking me, tormenting me. Let's pray. How are you tormented? By other people and by the dark voices in your head. What are the torments that have gone on for years, decades? As you saw that coffin lowered into the ground, and you sang those words earlier about death being crushed and having no sting, and you thought, actually, it really hurts still. What's the torment for you from this week? The email from your boss, the gossiping around the coffee machine at work, the invite you didn't get that all your other friends got, and you wonder why. We read in Matthew 27, verse 27, Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. It's about 600 men. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. Jesus refused to drink it. We're going to watch a video clip now from Groundhog Day, where a man is living the same life day after day after day. It repeats and it repeats and it repeats. Whatever he does makes no difference to his life. And so he decides with the woman that he is flirting with that he will just eat and drink whatever he wants. He didn't have to worry about what he was going to eat. I'll eat whatever I want because it makes no difference. My best friend Dave Hayward, his dad was talking to us when we were younger about going out with girls, and he was giving us advice, I think. And he said, once I was at a party when I was a teenager, I think it was lived in sepia colour, and he said, I was chatting to this girl, and there was a table of food, and I cut a piece of cheese from the cheese board, and I took it and I placed it in my mouth, and as I began to eat it, I realised it was just really cold butter. But I wanted to look cool with this girl, so I decided to style it out and just keep eating the butter. His experience was different to the man in Groundhog Day, and what he had to eat really did make a difference. He couldn't spit it out if he wanted to keep going. In our Bible passage, we see on the screen that it says that they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, or in Greek, after the sensation of it, or after the impression of it, he refused to drink it, because this was a once-in-a-moment time for Jesus. Jesus wasn't going to live the same day, day after day after day, like the chap in Groundhog Day, and he couldn't style it out like my best friend's dad when he ate the chunk of butter. Jesus was saving the world on the cross. When he tasted it, he refused to drink it. In Matthew's Gospel and in Mark's Gospel, it talks of this. And in Mark's Gospel, it says that Jesus had wine mixed with myrrh. Myrrh wasn't something that was given to you to dull the senses. It was a bitter, horrible taste. And in this passage, it says that he was given wine mixed with gall. Gall, in Psalm 69, says, they put gall in my food and gave me vinegar for my thirst. It's a foul-tasting thing. Gall, actually, is reference to various poisons or various disgusting-tasting foods and liquids. And they offer this to Jesus, not to dull the pain and get him through it. They offer this to Jesus to torment him afresh. That's why Jesus refused to drink it. Not because I'm going to take it all and I want to be fully present, which is how I understood this before I actually looked at the Greek words. Jesus on the cross, in his full humanity as well as his full Godhead, is saying, I'm vulnerable. Here he's not actually on the cross just yet, is he? He stood with the guards. And he's saying, I'm a human being, I'm in pain. Can you show me some compassion? And all they show him with the wine mixed with gall is torment. Have some of that, King of the Jews. Let's see what you do with it. And they torment him some more. But he refuses to drink it. Do we ever drink things that torment us? I'm talking spiritually now, rather than physically. Do we ever drink sin that torments us, sin that we do to ourselves or sin that others do to us. And it torments us, doesn't it? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I look at that? Why did I think about that? Why did they do that to me and say that to me and think that about me and write that about me? Why? And that sin can torment us. Because, friends, we're in a spiritual battle, aren't we? In our, for many of us, white middle classness, if we're not careful, we can forget that because we have so many comforts like heating and lighting and carpet and chairs. But we are in a spiritual battle. I was laying in bed on Wednesday evening and I was violently woken up at about 2 a.m, and I felt this singeing, ice-cold, circular thing on my head. And immediately I knew what it was. I thought, this is Satan trying to put a crown of guilt on my head. And I laid there in bed very quietly because I didn't want to wake Jo up because she was preparing for our wedding renewal of our vows. And I just said, Satan, I'm not having any of this. I refuse to let you have any power in my life. Jesus, I am completely reliant on you, and I want you to flood me with your presence and power in a way that I can feel right now. And that feeling went. It's not a regular occurrence for me. It's occasional. But it reminds me that we are in a spiritual battle. The devil comes to steal, kill and destroy, Jesus said in John verse 10. And I have come to give you life in all its fullness. The devil comes to torment us. And Jesus comes to give us peace. Our sin can torment us. And Jesus tasted sin in that he was tempted by it. He never drank it. In Hebrews we read, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathise with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. And so, friends, in this spiritual battle where we are tormented, we need to gather around as people that we respect spiritually to help us on that journey. I meet once a month with our chair of trustees, Paul Martin. Paul, can you wave at the back there for those who don't know who you are? Just at the back there. Looks a bit like Richard Gere today. And we meet once a month for lunch. And we chat about all things football, all things life. And then we have 3 themes that we rotate through each time we meet. And they're from Richard Foster's book about how ministers can be dragged away from ministry through 3 main temptations. And they are money, sex and power. Neil, how are you doing with your finances and where you spend your money at the moment? Next month, Neil, how are you doing with your sexual temptation, those you find attractive or that kind of thing? Neil, how are you doing with your power? And by that we mean relationships. How does your power affect the relationships that you have with other people? Who's annoying you at the moment? Who have you annoyed? Who are you out of fellowship with in the church family? And I try in those lunches to be as honest as I can. Because one, I trust Paul. So don't queue up afterwards with your coffee for a little one-to-one with him, because you'll get nothing. But 2, I know we need to share, because none of us are invincible. And we're always tempted to be tormented, to move from tasting to drinking. Ladies, when you see an attractive man walking along the road, it is okay to look at his beauty and say, that's an attractive man. That's just tasting. Drinking is when we say, oh, and we move to fantasy. I used women there because men don't struggle with any of that kind of thing. Tasting and drinking are completely separate, and some of us here are feeling so guilty because we're tempted. Friends, we are always tempted, and that's not wrong. What's wrong is when we're tempted and we sin, when we taste and we don't spit it out like Jesus did, but we drink it to the very dregs. Jesus refused. So what is it that torments us? No, that's not the question. What do I drink that torments me? What do I drink that torments me? Have you got someone or some people that you trust and respect, that you can talk with and say, look, this is what I struggle with. The number of people that have come to me and said, I struggle with this, and I look at them and I leave a moment and then I say, and you think you're the only one, don't you? They say, yeah. And I say, you're not. I could line up dozens of people who've chatted with me about whatever it is that you're chatting about in this study, who struggle like you. Because we all struggle, but we don't want to stay there. We want to move to a place where that torment is an echo in our mind that doesn't control us, where we say, I do taste, but I don't drink. And when I do drink, I know I'm forgiven because Jesus washes it clean. I got one of those letters when I was 40. Did you get them from the NHS? You've now turned 40, we'd like to examine you. Pardon? I've been fine for 40 years apart from dental treatment. Why are you so interested in me now? And so I went for these NHS checkups where they do your blood pressure and your height and your weight. I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I was so upset. I said, I've been telling everyone I'm 6 foot for years. Can you not lie on the form? I said to the lady. Just write 6 foot. She went, no, I'm sorry, you're 5'11" and 3/4. Well, that got me in a hump for the rest of that day. Anyway, a letter comes through and says, we'd like to see you about a few things that have come up in your check. And so I went to see a doctor about this check, a lady called Dr. Joshi at Tonbridge. She's wonderful. And we chatted through these things. And they said, I want you to try X, Y, and Z. So I did that. And then she said, we'll meet again in 4 months' time. So I met again in 4 months' time. And she said, yeah, we need to just tweak things a little bit. And I said to her, but I really struggle with this. And I said, and I shouldn't. She said, why shouldn't you? I said, because I'm a vicar. And I was being honest. I wasn't making a quip. I said, I should have it all together. And she said, well, your struggle's not my struggle. My struggle's something else. She said, and I'm a doctor. I said, but you should have it all together. Because you're a doctor. She said, exactly. I'm just a human being like you. And my friend, you're just a human being like everyone else in your church. So cut yourself some slack and do a bit better with the thing you're struggling with. I walked out of that appointment feeling 6 feet tall. Because she'd listened and she'd given me loving direction. So that rather than drinking and being tormented, I tasted and thought, no, not having that today. Not having that. Not today. Friends, we're going to listen to a poem now by Michael Coist, a Catholic priest, and it's going to be read to us by Sally Allen. Sally.
Is the candle after Laura or after me?
After you.
After me. I have fallen, Lord, once more. I can't go on. I'll never succeed. I'm ashamed, and I don't dare look at you. And yet I struggled, Lord, for I knew that you were right near me, bending over me, watching. But temptation blew like a hurricane, and instead of looking at you, I turned my head away. I stepped aside, while you stood silent and sorrowful. Like the spurned fiancé who sees his loved one carried off by his rival, when the wind died down as suddenly as it had risen, when the lightning ceased after proudly streaking the darkness. All of a sudden, I found myself alone, ashamed, disgusted with my sin in my hands. That I have wanted but want no more, that I have imagined, sought, played with, fondled for a long time. This sin that I selected as a customer, his purchase, this sin that I have paid for and cannot return, for the storekeeper is no longer there. This tasteless sin, this odorless sin, this sin that sickens me. That I have finally embraced while coldly bypassing you. My arms outstretched, my eyes and heart irresistibly drawn. This sin that I have grasped and consumed with gluttony, it's mine now, but it possesses me as a spiderweb holds captive the fly. It is mine. It sticks to me. It flows in my veins. It fills my heart. It has slipped in everywhere, as darkness slips into a forest at dusk and fills all the patches of light. I can't get rid of it. I run from it like the master of an unwanted and mangy dog, but it catches up with me and rubs joyfully against my legs. Everyone must notice it. I am so ashamed that I feel like crawling to avoid being seen. I'm ashamed of being seen by my friend. I'm ashamed of it being seen by you, Lord, for you loved me and I forgot you. I forgot you because I was thinking of myself, and one can't think of several persons at once. One must choose, and I chose. And your voice and your look and your love hurt me. They weigh me down. They weigh me down more than my sin. Lord, don't look at me like that. For I am naked, I am dirty, I am down, shattered, with no strength left. I dare make no more promises. I can only stand bowed before you.
Come, son, look up. Isn't it mainly your vanity that is wounded? If you loved me, you would grieve, but you would trust. Do you think that there's a limit to God's love? Do you think that for a moment I stopped loving you? But you still rely on yourself, son. You must rely only on me. Ask my pardon and get up quickly. You see, it's not falling that's the worst, but staying on the ground.
It's not falling that's the worst, it's staying on the ground. This table reminds us that we don't need to stay on the ground. Because of Jesus' body represented in bread here, broken for us, his blood represented in grape juice here, poured out for us, we are forgiven. And all those things that we've drank are washed clean so that we do not need to have torment, but can have peace. We're going to have communion together now. The servers will serve you. Please eat the bread as you receive it and drink the wine together at the end. If you need gluten-free, please raise your hand and I will come and serve you where you are. And as we share the bread and wine together, we're going to see Psalm 51 on the screen, a psalm that David wrote after he had raped Bathsheba and killed her husband, and then Nathan the prophet comes to him and says, "You have sinned." And that poem, Psalm 51, is just a tiny light, like the one that was here ever so briefly, that was a step back towards God for David. And as you take communion today, if there's sin, crud in your life, eat the bread and drink the wine as a way of saying, "Jesus, I'm coming back to you, knowing that I am forgiven." So if the servers could come up, that would be fantastic.